Steelers OTAs officially wrapped up this week in Pittsburgh as the team prepares for mandatory minicamp next week at UPMC training facility there in Pittsburgh. And today I'm going to be breaking down my list of 10 winners from Steelers OTAs, plus my list of 5 losers from this year's OTA practices. Before we get into today's edition of Steelers Talk, like the video if you are excited for minicamp next week. Aaron Rodgers, the man himself, QB1, will be there in attendance next week for mandatory minicamp. So if you're excited for that, click that thumbs up icon to kick off today's show. So keep in mind here before we get into the winners and the losers that really this point of the season, guys, it's really inconsequential because what happens at these OTAs is you go over your basic install. You go, do individual work at practice. You do some stuff, some very basic O&D periods, some team drill stuff, but it's really not anything where it's going to make the difference between, making the roster or not making the roster. It's not going to make a difference between being a good football team and a bad football team this year. Most of the heavy lifting gets done at training camp, so it's important not to overreact to any particular thing during OTAs one way or another. So even if somebody's on the losers list today, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't turn things around during training camp. And just because they're on the winners list here doesn't mean things can't go sideways once we get to Latrobe. So first here, let's start with the winners here because I think there's a lot of players here that really did some good things for themselves this week in Pittsburgh during these practices. Of course, no pads. It's all in shorts. It's football-like, as head coach Mike Tomlin likes to say. But Roman Wilson, second-year receiver out of Michigan, really didn't play at all his rookie season last year because dealt with a bunch of injuries, and by the time that he got healthy, it was just too late into the year to get on the moving train, as Coach T likes to say. But Roman Wilson is somebody that they really believed in when they drafted him out of Michigan in the 3rd round last year, and you can see why heading into this offseason why that is. And something that's always impressed me with Roman is that even though he's kind of a smaller wide receiver, he's got very natural hands. His ability to pluck the ball out of the air outside of his frame is very, very impressive. And, we saw some clips last year of him at practice where he didn't really look sharp. The acceleration, the getting in and out of his breaks just wasn't fantastic because he was hurt and he was getting back from injury and all that stuff. But now it looks like he is back to 100% healthy. He's looking sharp out there. He's looking really, really good. He's made some really impressive catches. And, I'm really excited about this young man heading into his 2nd year, and it certainly seems like the Steelers share that sentiment. Then we get to Kaleb Johnson, the rookie running back out of Iowa, who I expect to take over the number 1 running back role pretty early on in the season. Now, I think to start the season, Jaylen Warren will probably get a majority of the snaps at number 1 running back here. But I think by week 6, coming out of the bye, I think Kaleb Johnson's going to do enough in those first 4 games of the season to kind of prove that, okay, now it's kind of his run game, especially on early downs where that's really the point in the, the point of the progression there where he's going to want to get on the field. Like Jaylen Warren is more built to be a 3rd down back, a pass down type of back. Kaleb Johnson's really built to be an early down running back. He's big. He's got great vision. He fits the outside zone run scheme that Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, wants to run. And at practices, he's looking just as good as advertised. He is absolutely chiseled, if you guys cannot tell by that photo right there. He's looking fast. And I'm really looking forward to see what he does in his rookie season. Then we get to Cole Holcomb, the interior linebacker here. Missed the entirety of the 2024 season and a good chunk of 2023 with a really gruesome knee injury. And a big question surrounding Holcomb was, when he got back, was he going to be the same player? Because he was a legitimate starting interior linebacker, before the injury. But with that really serious knee, contusion, we'll call it, ripped up his knee. There's certainly questions as to whether or not he'd get back to fully healthy and be back to the player that he was, but it does appear that he is back to normal. He's moving around really well, and it certainly seems like he's going to have a chance to even compete with Peyton Wilson, the really, really good 2nd-year inside linebacker that really showed some good things last year in his rookie season. Cole Holcomb is going to have a chance to compete for that starting job this year, and with the way that he was looking at OTAs, he may just win that week 1 job. Then we get to Beanie Bishop Jr., the slot cornerback here. Made some big plays for this team last year, particularly in the first half of the season where he got the majority of slot cornerback reps when Cam Sutton was dealing with his suspension. But with Cam Sutton now out of the building, it does seem like at least to start, it is Beanie's job to lose. They haven't brought in anybody else in free agency. Like Mike Hilton is still available, who was a fantastic slot corner for this team for many years. He's available in free agency, and the Steelers have decided not to go that route and to go with Beanie Bishop Jr. at least for the time being. So he's at least in pole position right now, and he's certainly asserting himself as the starting slot corner, but there's certainly going to be competition. And if Beanie Bishop Jr., let's put it this way, if he's not up to snuff in training camp, the Steelers will find somebody else to fill this spot. Then Darnell Washington, the tight end, he impressed over these last 2 weeks with just his movement ability. We all know how big Mount Washington is. He's like pretty much the size of an offensive lineman, only he's a tight end, and he moves like nobody else his size can. And this year, it was really a priority for him, he said, to cut down a little bit, get leaner, get faster, get quicker. And according to the reports on the ground there in Pittsburgh, all those things look to be the case. Mason Rudolph said he looks like a completely different player than when he was last year. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Mount Washington's going to be able to do as the number 2 tight end in the Steelers offense this year. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comment section. Who will be the surprise breakout player for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season? Who's a player that not a lot of people are really talking about right now that you think is going to have a stellar season for this football team? This will be the pinned comment on today's show. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time. But let me know your surprise breakout for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Then we move on to rookie out of Oregon. First-round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, Derrick Harmon, who, one of the reasons why the Steelers drafted him and prioritized taking him in round 1 was because of his athleticism. And his movement ability at his size is special, folks, okay? And that is being put on full display at OTAs. And even though, the pads don't go on and we're not really going to know how good Derrick Harmon is as an NFL caliber player until we get to Latrobe and those pads go on, just his ability going through individual drills where he is moving the way that he is at his size is exactly why the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted this young man. He can be an absolute disruptor at the defensive tackle position for many years to come. And as a rotational piece this year, I think he's going to be stellar, and he's going to give the Steelers defensive line some of the best depth in the National Football League at this particular position. And if you want to get his jersey today, you want to rock Derrick Harmon's number 99 for years to come, you can go to chatsports.com/Harmon to pick up your Derrick Harmon Steelers jersey today. It is officially licensed by the National Football League by our friends at Fanatics, and you guys can pick up your jersey today. Also, it helps out the channel, so if you're planning on getting a Derrick Harmon jersey anyway and you want to help us out here at Steelers Talk, all you have to do is click our link, chatsports.com/Harmon, down there in the comments and description of today's show, and make a purchase. Speaking of players that have really impressed at OTA so far is Joey Porter Jr. And JPJ, had a little bit of a penalty concern last year. There were certain games where, he was tasked with going up against number 1 wide receivers and he got toasted, all this different stuff. And, there's a lot of people in Steelers Nation and in this fan base that think he's not a very good corner. Now, I think when you look at the body of work so far from Joey Porter Jr. in his first 2 years, I think it's actually been very good, and I think he still has a very bright future. But there were concerns heading into this offseason, heading into this year, as to whether he would take another step forward and get cleaner and do all these things. And according to the people on the ground, he is looking phenomenal and like a true number 1 lockdown corner that I think we all think that he has the potential to become with his athleticism, with his play strength, with his arm length. His physicality. This guy has a chance to be one of the true lockdown corners in the National Football League, and hopefully this is the year where he cleans up some of the penalties and he truly joins the elite tier of corners in this league. Speaking of corners, Corey Trice Jr. apparently is looking really good as well, really explosive, really quick. Apparently, according to the beat reporters on the ground there in Pittsburgh, he is moving in a way that they haven't seen him move in his entire Steelers tenure, and he has a lot to prove this year. Okay, I think Omar Khan said it at the Combine this year. They're going to address that position in free agency. They ended up doing that, bringing in Darius Slay. But Corey Trice Jr. is still a very young man, and he still has a potential here to work behind both Joey Porter Jr. and Darius Slay, the starters, and he'll probably get a lot of work as the Steelers' dime backer like he did last year before his injury, and try to prove to this team, yeah, I can play outside corner when Darius Slay retires after this season. Because remember, Darius Slay is going to retire after this year. So, that number 2 cornerback role alongside Joey Porter Jr. for the future is very much open. And Corey Trice Jr., if he can prove he can stay healthy, if he can prove that, he's got the physical capabilities of being a true number 2 corner in this league, he's got a chance to prove that he can be that guy. And I think we all had that vision, when Joey Porter Jr. and Corey Trice Jr. showed up that first rookie minicamp. You get these photos of these 2 super long, physical, big corners with great athleticism. You have visions of having one of the best cornerback duos in all of football. I'm really hoping that Corey Trice Jr. Continues to impress as we continue on here in the offseason. Then Isaiah Loudermilk, another defensive tackle, has been showing out during these practices as well, apparently. And, Loudermilk, somebody that is a good contributor, somebody that's a rotational piece that, because of the addition of Derrick Harmon, is probably not going to get a ton of playing time this year, but he is going to get rotated in. And, the more the merrier when it comes to defensive line depth as far as I'm concerned. And then somebody that got signed to the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, so he is by default a winner, Quindell Johnson, a safety here that's kind of gone around the league. He started his career in Chicago, and he's gone to the Rams and, a couple different teams. He's kind of bounced around, but he's entering his age 26 season. He's got good size at 208 pounds, and he's got some good versatility. He played 4 seasons as a starter with Memphis, of course, and he played slot corner, free safety, and strong safety. He can play all over the place at that size. He's a pretty decent athlete. And, I'm not saying he's going to make the roster. He's certainly got somebody that's coming in kind of later and getting on a moving train here. He's got a lot to prove. He's going to make the final Steelers roster, and he's definitely going to have to be a contributor on special teams. But you look at the safety room right now, Minkah Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Elliott are your 2 kind of true starters. Juan Thornhill is going to be kind of your bandit that comes in. He's going to be trying to be that ball hawk in the middle of the defense when you go to your 3 safety packages. And then Miles Killebrew, your special teams ace, and Sebastian Castro, I think are probably guys that could make this team as well. Definitely Killebrew, Castro, we'll see. So Quindell definitely has an uphill battle to make this final roster, in my opinion. But with his size, his versatility, I thought he had some very fun tape when he was coming out of Memphis a few seasons ago. This is certainly a nice camp body addition for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm excited to see what he can do over the next several weeks and months. So make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon. Before we get into our losers list here, I just did the 10 winners. We're about to get into my 5 losers. Go ahead, click that thumbs up icon if you are enjoying today's video. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support, and clicking that thumbs up icon is a free and easy way to help out our channel. Okay, so now on to the losers. And I just want to reiterate here what I said at the beginning of the show. Just because these guys are on this list doesn't mean that they're not going to make the team or that they, that they're terrible players or anything like that. I'm just saying that their standing on the team probably isn't in the best spot based on what happened during OTAs. Okay, so first we're going to start with literally all the quarterbacks in the quarterback room not named Aaron Rodgers because, of course, at the final day of OTAs, it gets announced that Aaron Rodgers is going to be on his way to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he will be this team's starting quarterback. So obviously, Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Skylar Thompson all go down a peg here heading into training camp. And, that's obviously bad news for Mason because he was hoping that he was going to get a chance to be this team's starting quarterback. Will Howard might get less snaps during minicamp and, get less snaps during training camp, all these different things for his development. But when it comes to the quarterback situation, okay, I'm thrilled that Mason Rudolph is here as this team's backup. We saw what happened when, Rudy had to come in and he had to win football games at the end of the 2023 season. Obviously, the defenses that they played weren't very good. I think, Seattle and Cincinnati had like the 30th and 31st best defenses that year. Those were terrible defenses. Then he played the Baltimore Ravens backups. All those things are granted, and that's part of the reason why Mason's not a starting quarterback in this league. But he has shown that, if he needs to come in and he needs to win a football game for you, he's more than capable of going out there, throwing a deep pass, off of play action, stuff like that. He can play within rhythm. He's not going to provide much in terms of pocket presence or playmaking ability or high-end arm talent or anything like that. But, he's a mid-level good NFL backup quarterback that if Aaron Rodgers, God forbid, gets hurt and if the defense and the run game can hold up their end of the bargain, this team can win football games if Aaron Rodgers is out for a couple of weeks, which is something that I'm thrilled for, and I'm happy Mason Rudolph is here on this team. Also, something that I do want to point out is that we do have conflicting reports on how Will Howard did at OTAs, but even Howard himself has said that he has had his struggles during OTAs this year. He's somebody that's dealt with a little bit of an accuracy concern apparently in the first 2 weeks here of non-padded practices, and which is a little bit of a concern because this is the time of year where you want to see, only good things about quarterbacks, particularly young quarterbacks that could be your future at the position. But he's struggled with placement at times, even with no pressure on him, even with no pads on, which is concerning. But this is still very early. I want to make that abundantly clear. I think Howard does have some starter quality tools that could be developed, especially when Aaron Rodgers gets in there and starts developing and mentoring him throughout the season. But, any indication that Will Howard is going to be, this year's starting quarterback or anything like that, even if Rodgers didn't show up, I just don't think he's ready, and I think the team probably agrees with me on that. Then Skylar Thompson, the other quarterback in this group, it's bad news for him because he's likely getting cut. This team's going to hold on to 3 quarterbacks. My guess is they're going to hold on to Rodgers, Rudolph, and then Howard and Thompson will probably end up getting cut at the end of camp. Obviously, anything can happen. If Will Howard absolutely stinks it up, maybe they keep Thompson as a third quarterback, or maybe they keep Thompson as a third quarterback and they keep Howard on the practice squad. But he's certainly on the outskirts now that Rodgers is in town. So all 3 of the quarterbacks not named Rodgers, I think, are losers from OTAs this week. Then we get to Blake Mangelson, defensive lineman, a UDFA out of BYU that, was a pretty highly sought after UDFA this year, but he ends up getting cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So just by default, if you're getting cut by a team during OTAs, you're probably a loser of the OTAs. So he will not be a part of this team moving forward. Another player that got cut and therefore is a loser for OTAs is Joshua Bledsoe, the safety. They replace him with Quindell Johnson, who we talked about earlier, who ended up being a winner. So that's kind of how the cookie crumbles at this point. He was released by the Steelers this week when they signed on Quindell. Okay, so I can't wait for mandatory minicamp next week, guys. Now that OTAs are finally in the back burner, Rodgers is going to sign his contract at some point. He hasn't at the time of me recording this video. I know he's flying to Pittsburgh today. I'm recording this on Friday. We'll see when he ends up signing the contract officially. They might be doing like a press conference on Monday in preparation for the start of minicamp on Tuesday. We'll see how the team ends up handling this whole situation, but you guys know the clips coming out of mandatory minicamp with Rodgers in the Steelers gear, throwing with that iconic throwing motion to DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin and Roman, and getting all those clips is just going to be absolutely awesome over the next week here. So if you guys want that daily and free coverage of Steelers mandatory minicamp, we're going to be breaking down all the latest on this show next week. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate your guys' support, and until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.